Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?
What's up, nerds? Welcome to a very special spoiler-filled episode of the Multiverse Report. We are recapping Spider-Man No Way Home, from Tom Holland to Tobey Maguire to Andrew Garfield and everywhere in between. I'm sorry, did I spoil something? Well, it's a spoiler review, people, so that's what you get for clicking on something that says spoilers. My name is Mike Gibson. With me as always is Steve Haller. What's up, Steve?
Well, apparently every Spider-Man known to man and most of the villains. So, yeah, we had an event this week. I can't even call it a movie at this point. It was an event.
Oh, it's definitely an event movie. Yeah. For sure. Yes. And I think, you know what? I think I touched on this in the non-spoiler reaction thing that we did on the other episode. I think if I had gone into it more with that mindset, that this was going to be like a popcorn event movie,
yep,
I wouldn't have been as hard on it as I have been in talking about it with either myself or other people since then. Because I really did like a lot about it, and I'm excited to talk about it with you because, as we said in the other one, we haven't really talked about it. That other one where we were talking in kind of vague,
right,
1,000-foot view opinions. Was the first time we had spoken about it, and now we're going to really dive in.
Well, I would say, as Dr. Stephen Strange would say, let's Scooby-Doo this shit. that legitimately got me laughing out loud when he said that. Yeah.
Please Scooby-Doo this shit. And I liked it because the line in the trailer was Scooby-Doo this crap, right? Or something, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And that sounded
weirdly overdubbed, apparently.
No, it just sounded disingenuous. Like, clearly they did it. Oh, okay, let's do a safe take for the trailer,
Yep.
But him saying shit was like, oh yeah, that is more like what he would say. Like,
yeah, that's a very Stephen Strange, like, all right, come on.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, I thought this movie was almost exactly what I expected it to be, which was I don't know, a lot. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Sometimes I kind of thought too much going on. But it wasn't. I never wanted a live action Spider-Verse movie. I've said this 1,000 times to people to friends, to you.
You've said it 1,000 times on this pod, yeah.
On this show, it's not something I ever wanted. But if they make that, will I watch it and enjoy it? Yes, and they did, and I did.
Yeah. Well, in that, I know we were very wary. And for anyone who did not know, again, heavy spoilers. We've said it numerous times. All of the Spider-Men showed up.
Yes.
And the thing I know you and I were both very, very worried about was them doing it well. And if they were going to pull it off, which I don't think either of us necessarily wanted them to, if they were going to pull it off, they needed to pull it off. And holy shit, did they pull it off.
Yeah, this is the best. I don't know that they could have done it a better way than they did it. But I don't know. I thought the first half of it was kind of a mess. It was just like things happening really fast. It was kind of clunky for me. It was like they're throwing a lot of stuff at us.
It was like veering towards Spider-Man 3 territory, and then they pulled out of the dive.
Well, that's the kind of the difference where Spider-Man 3 is like, we're throwing a lot of stuff at you, and then we're not going to stick the landing at all. This is like, we're throwing a lot of stuff at you so we can get all this mess out of the way. And then once the mess is out of the way, we can move a lot smoother and have a lot of fun with all this setup. But the setup is a little clunky because it happens a lot, I think, with movies that take place immediately after the end of the previous movie. Sometimes it's hard to continue that because there's no lapse in time that you can just like reference or make the audience aware of. Oh, sometimes between between the last movie and this movie, these events happened that have changed these characters. Like,
right.
Nothing. You have to show everything that's happening because there's no time lapse.
Well, and it actually, if you want to keep it in the nerdverse, it reminds me a lot of Rogue One, which I believe is my second favorite Star Wars movie at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, the first half of that movie, or the first, like, third of that movie, it's a bit of a jumbled mess.
Yep.
And then they pull out of the dive, and it's like, they turn it into this very great movie. And I feel like this kind of had that same trajectory of, like, I don't know where this is going. Okay, I know where this is going. Okay, we're fine.
Right.
We're good.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought, like, during the first hour or hour 15 of the movie, I was like, they better figure out a way to get out of this. They better, I don't know, is this going to be the whole movie? Because it's just, it's okay, but it's like, it's clunky. It's not really working for me. And they did. It was great. I'm trying to think in order. I know we're going to jump all over the place, but I'm trying to think in order. But the first big thing that I think we could talk about that happened way earlier than I thought it was going to, Matt Murdock.
Yeah. We talked about the other half of the spoiler on the other show with Hawkeye Talkeye. And I was like holding my tongue of like, oh yeah, but the Matt Murdock confirmation officially as Peter's lawyer, that means Charlie Cox is back, and also clarifies some of Kevin Feige's statements, because nobody showed up in a red mask, but there was definitely a blind lawyer. So that clarifies a couple of pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah, and Steve, let me tell you, I've mentioned a couple times that I saw a spoiler for No Way Home a few weeks ago. That was the spoiler I saw, and I have been talking about it with you in a ways that hopefully
it kept it like,
I was like, I can't say that I know that he's gonna, because we were talking about like, why would Kevin Feige say this if he's not gonna be in it? If he's in it, then this. If he's not, then this. And the Hawkeye thing, like, well, what does this mean? I'm just like,
and in your brain you're like, well, I already know what's happening, so okay. Well, you pulled it off, my friend. You pulled it off.
Thank you. I did it for you, my friend. So yeah, that was cool. And part of me was like, ooh, is he going to come back later? And I was like, no, there's no room for this. There's no room. It was cool enough that he was there. I'm glad
they kept it tight. They kept like, okay, they didn't draw it out with him in the prison or in the jail, like the interrogation room with him. They didn't do any of that. It was just like, okay, here's the scene, and there you go.
Right. I really liked it. I love the little brick through the window.
Yep.
Catch, like, how did you do that? I'm a really good lawyer. I gotta say that was one of several cheering out loud theater moments. That was great. It's like, and that's the kind of thing people are always like, the theatrical experience, blah blah blah. With a movie like this, you do get that theatrical experience that you don't get anywhere else, like a mass of people. Like, for me, I didn't really react to that because I knew it was coming, so I was like, okay, yep, there he is, and it made me happy to see him, and I loved it. But there was clearly people there that had no idea that was a possibility,
right? Because
they were like, what? Like huge reactions, like, and then just like murmuring and talking, like, that's either like,
is that who I thought it was?
Yeah, like they're immediately theorizing or explaining to the other person why this is a big reaction, like, it was great. Obviously, when other characters started showing up, there were huge moments of applause and reactions and screams and things like that.
Well, and I guess that was part of it too, is I didn't expect, like, right after that, you pretty much, like, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot of exposition in between that and Octavius showing up.
Yeah, I know. And that happened, like, that's what I'm saying. Things happen really fast. Like, it's like, he's in trouble. Okay, he's trying to get into college. Here's Matt Murdock, and he can't get into college. And here's Dr. Octopus. And it's like, whoa, whoa.
Yep.
This is happening real fast. And then the whole, like, even when they started coming through, or he started going after them, and Doctor Strange was like, "Hey, I gave this little thing, and you just shoot him, and they go in here." Like, it was just like, what? That could be a whole movie.
Right.
It's like a 10-minute plot point in 1 2.5 hour movie. Like, that's a lot. That's like what I'm talking about, like moving fast, or like, now you have this special thing, and if you just shoot him, it'll go in here, and then it's like, oh shit.
Right.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Speaking of a lot, J. Jonah Jameson.
Okay,
just because he always steals the show as J. Jonah Jameson. Alex Jones made an appearance in this movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh wait.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Yeah. I think that's a cool way to bring him in, have him be like kind of faithful to the character, but also like kind of reinvent him. Like, you know, it's not in 2021 like a newspaper editor, really. Like, newspapers are dying, so he's got to do something other than. I think in the Spider-Man PS4 game, or PlayStation game, I should say, he's a radio host or a podcaster, but it's like a conservative talk radio thing.
Right.
So it's not dissimilar to what they're doing in the MCU, but it's still like a way to reinvent him.
So he's gone from cranky newspaper editor to Rush Limbaugh to now Alex Jones. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And they all fit like exactly what they're trying to portray with it. So that works.
Yeah. It is like, that's one of those things though where it is a bit of like they're cutting corners. Yeah. Because they're giving us a character that we've seen in the Sam Raimi trilogy, and we know in that trilogy he hates Spider-Man. But in this trilogy, we only meet him in the last moments of Far From Home. And do we really know that he even hates Spider-Man, or is he just recording this? Is he just reporting this story of Mysterio outing Spider-Man? And then that carries into this, like, okay, well, I guess we're supposed to understand that he has hated Spider-Man for a very long time in this third one. Like, okay, and I think the casting of that actor is doing most of that work, and it's not really setting up any kind of hatred other than we know this character is supposed to hate Spider-Man, so we're going along with it. Plus, this actor we've seen in this role before, so we're going along with it. It's like, it's corner cutting.
Yeah. Now, at the same time, I mean, it's partly also like not giving an origin story again for the 18 millionth time. Like, anybody who's going to these movies, or should I say most of the people that are going to these movies that are going to care enough to care that Jameson hates Spider-Man, is going to know who J. Jonah Jameson is. Yeah. So you don't really need to introduce him as that at the same time. So I guess my wife wouldn't have picked up on it. But I don't know if you would need that outside of, like, you wouldn't need the context that this guy's the guy that hates Spider-Man, and there's nothing that really comes to fruition of it. You know what I mean? There's no real payoff for it. It's just him ranting about shit. Yeah,
I don't think there's not really a payoff for Jameson.
No, it's kind of just a, like, old man yells at cloud.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did feel like the corner cutting happening a little bit, especially with Jamie Foxx as Electro.
Yeah, that one I'll give you.
And that's, I mentioned in our non-spoiler review where you said something about I was saying that it's kind of a lot of work to expect the audience to make a movie. If you're making a movie where you're expecting them to have watched separate versions of these characters, not even movies that are within the universe that you are currently in, but you have to have watched 5 other Spider-Man movies to enjoy it. Like, does that really make it a good movie if you're like building on the emotional work that those movies did? Like, you should be your own thing, or at least I would prefer that it would be its own thing. I've said that 1,000 times. So, but in this, they bring back Electro, and at first he's just the blue Electro body from Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then all of a sudden he gets surrounded by sand, and when he wakes up, he says, "I got my body back," and there's no explanation or questioning of it at all. They're just like, "Yep, okay, he's got his body back. That's all you need to do." And then
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss that, because I watched not the greatest cut of this movie. Let's put it that way. I did not go with Mike to the theater. So I wasn't sure, and there's a couple things where I'm sure, like, I didn't get the same experience, or I didn't get the whole story.
Sure.
Missed some pieces here and there or whatever. I thought I was missing something on that. I'm glad to hear that I just okay, cool.
Nope. He just got covered in sand and woke up with his human flesh body back for no reason. And then
that's how that works.
And then continues to act like a completely different character throughout the movie. He's not the nervous, bungling guy.
Right.
And he's also not the power-hungry, one-liner Electro of Spider-Man 2. Good. And in Amazing Spider-Man 2, he is two different things. Like, he gets the electric power and then is a completely different person than he was earlier, which doesn't really make a ton of sense. And this one, he's a third version of that same person. And he says something, he's like, I like who I am in this universe more, or something like that. But they don't explain why his character is different. They were just like, yeah, you want to be cool. Let's make you cooler. So you're cooler now. And we're not going to explain it to the audience because we don't have time or reasons to explain it really at all. I got to say,
at the same time, on the opposite end, you talk about how if you hadn't seen all the other movies, it doesn't quite add up to it. If you hadn't seen all the other movies, you probably wouldn't even have picked up on it.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant. In our non-spoiler, I said there was one instance where it might have
gotcha.
Yep. And that's what I was talking about.
Okay, that makes sense now.
It would be less confusing for Electro if you hadn't seen that movie, because then you're like, what?
Where'd that guy come from?
Yeah, why is he acting so crazily
That
different?
sure looks like Jamie Foxx, but...
Yeah, I got to say, I liked the interpretation of him in this movie more than I liked him in Amazing Spider-Man 2, for sure. And great way to keep it very MCU-y and have him get a hold of an arc reactor.
Right.
Like, that is, of course, Electro would go after a technology like that doesn't exist in his realm, that's perpetually supplying him with electricity. Makes perfect sense. Like, that was a cool tie-in, for sure. And I got to say, Far From Home, I'm not a big fan of Far From Home. And a lot of it is because it's a Spider-Man movie where they won't stop talking about Iron Man the entire time. And I just want it to be a Spider-Man movie, but they won't shut up about Iron Man. I got to say, I love that they didn't spend half the movie talking about another superhero in this movie.
We've talked about it. Like, Far From Home wasn't a Spider-Man movie. It was Iron Man 4.
It was an MCU.
Or it was like Iron Man epilogue.
It was Endgame epilogue. Yeah.
Which exactly. They even said before that, this is the last movie in Phase 4. This isn't something new. This is going to be the capstone for that. So I guess it makes sense. But this is... I talked about it in one of the other chats I'm in. This was kind of the first real Spider-Man movie. Like, that he's gotten his wings in the MCU verse, where it's just been like, I don't know, like, Homecoming was more of the friendly neighborhood. This brought him back down to, well, and ultimately, I'm sure we'll get there, but at the end, like, where they're going to take this, I almost feel like this is bringing Spidey back to friendly neighborhood Spider-Man compared to where he is or has been.
I agree, and I mean, I guess we can talk about the ending now if you want to. But it is... I'm very excited to see where they go with this, because it does really seem like they are stripping everything. I'm excited about it, but it's weird. And I said this to somebody else. I think it's weird that they would pretty much take away everything that they have spent 3 movies building up for their version of Peter Parker. Just all his relationships, all his secondary side characters, whether they're dead or don't remember him, he's on his own. And that's, for me, that's cool, because you're like starting a new slate. He's building his own costume, and he is friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which I'm very excited about. But it's just shocking to me that they'd be like, we spend this whole trilogy and now we're going to kind of like completely start over, but not start over. But he doesn't have all these side characters that you love that are in his life, all these relationships that he has that help make him an interesting character. They're gone. I was like, okay, weird, but great. I'm in. So it was surprising to me, but yes, I am very excited to see where it goes. But I don't know. Like I said, surprised that they did it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to complain because
No,
I think we've talked numerous times that both of us want to see a little more grounded Spidey, and I think this is probably going to be our best way to get it.
Yeah. I guess I don't. I wonder where that idea came from, and because it clearly is something they were building towards.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, did they change their mind at some point? And they're like, "You're right. He is too wrapped into Spider-Man. He does use too much Stark technology. He is too much of an Avenger and not as much of a Spider-Man as he should be.
Right.
Let's make him. How do we make him more just regular Spider-Man?"
Well,
I don't know.
In all honesty, it might have been partly with bringing in Kingpin, bringing in Hawkeye, like focusing on Hawkeye, like realizing they were going to start doing more city-based stuff, and take that to a different level versus like, because Spidey's been part of these large teams, but it's always ultimately came back down to him hanging around New York.
Yeah. And I got real excited when I realized after the movie, I was like, oh, now there's a real possibility that the villain for the Spider-Man 4 is Kingpin, which would be awesome.
There's no history there.
Yeah. Well, there isn't in the movies.
Right. That's
besides Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
There isn't in the movies, and it would be interesting because I don't know, because we've seen him go up against Daredevil for so long, Fisk, or Kingpin, but and he originally was a main Spider-Man villain, and Daredevil ended up taking him as like his arch enemy kind of, but
right, when the Spider-Man villains kind of went a little bit more fantastical, and Kingpin kind of stayed in New York and did his thing, and
speaking of villains, I thought some of the motivations of these villains were a little murky.
Well,
they didn't really, I gotta say, this was I realized this after the fact, because I was expecting, because looking at the trailer, Electro looks different. It must not be the same Electro. It must be from a different universe Electro. He just looks like Jamie Foxx. And we saw the red on the octopus arms. We're like, okay, this can't be the same Dr. Octopus. It's just a different Dr. Octopus, but he took that nanotechnology, so his arms were red. So they were the same versions of the characters from the other movies. And that's fine, but you're talking about a multiverse. You're opening a multiverse, but then you really only pull from two universes. Like it made the multiverse feel small, kind of, when I would have liked to I would have preferred them be different versions so they can still have the same characterizations and relationships, I guess, but then also throw in something different. Maybe Dr. Octopus can do something that the other one couldn't do, or maybe you bring in a different character. Like maybe most of them are from the other movies, but then there's one that's from somewhere else, like Scorpion or something from another universe, or Shocker or Vulture from like a different version of somebody, or a new villain we haven't seen or something.
Bring in Prowler if you want to keep leaning on the heading towards Miles track.
I thought that would have been cool, and just like a way to be like, the multiverse is huge, and not the multiverse is these two other worlds.
I mean, you're looking at the Star Wars thing though, like. Every time they make a new Star Wars movie, we somehow end up on Tatooine and talking about Corellia. Like, there's a galaxy out there. Go find the rest of it.
Yeah.
There's a multiverse out there. Go find the rest of it.
They were clearly hinting at that at the end when the universe was opening and you saw silhouettes of villains. I was trying to see. I saw a Scorpion and I saw a Rhino. I couldn't really tell in the couple shots.
I saw some blurs on the screen.
Yeah. One was a shaped in Rhino. One was a Scorpion shaped person.
Nice.
And that was cool, but it's like, okay, this is the same Willem Dafoe. It's the same, or Green Goblin or whatever. And like when I say motivations were murky, like I don't really know why. I don't know, like Sandman, like you got no dog in this race. Like there's no reason that Sandman shouldn't have stayed and helped Peter, I guess.
Right.
Like if he's trying to get rid of his sand powers or whatever. Like, why just go join? Why are you mad at Spider-Man? Like, the end of Spider-Man 3, you leave on good notes or good terms, and you have no reason to hate this Spider-Man that you just met. So, like, why?
Well, and
all
even
of a
at the
sudden
beginning,
like,
he
yeah,
was
I'm out
like,
of here.
right. Even at the beginning, he was like, kind of happy-go-lucky with Peter for a bit.
Yeah, he was like, "Hey, Spider-Man, it's me, Flint Marko. Do you remember me? No, I'm a different Spider-Man. Oh, okay. Well, I want to help you. Okay, thank you. Help me. That would be great."
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, when Goblin switches and Electro's like, "Yeah," he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go with you guys." Well, why? Like, there's no reason for you to do that. And then, like, also, like in that scene where the fight breaks out in the apartment, Dr. Octopus just runs away. And we just don't see him again until the end of the movie, until he just shows up in the nick of time at the end. It's like, okay, where did he go and why did he, like, why? If he's I don't know. It was just weird motivational, like, okay, you need characters to be gone for a little bit, so let's
yeah.
They're just gone.
They're gone.
Yeah. I loved it was cool seeing Doctor Strange again. We talked about Doctor Strange a little bit at the beginning of this. But it made me realize, and the post credit scene made me very excited for Multiverse of Madness, the next Doctor Strange movie. But just seeing him in this movie with all the visuals and stuff, and the mirror universe scene and stuff, I was like, yeah, man, I want more Doctor Strange. And it made me remember how much I liked that first movie and all the cool visuals that he can do and stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, more of this, please.
Yeah, and I think in a packed movie that had a ton going on, I think they used Strange the appropriate amount of time and didn't overuse him, which is something I was kind of worried about. Like, going in, I was like, all right, this is going to be a Strange and Spidey movie versus a Spidey movie. And it was like, all right, this is a Spider-Man movie that Strange is peripherally involved in. And
I could have done a little bit less of him, to be honest.
Yeah, possibly.
But
I thought they were going to go more, so I think when I saw what they did, it kind of tempered my expectations a little, which is...
I mean, the thing that I'm thinking they could have gotten rid of somehow is the thing that I just said that I liked, like the whole chase of the box, the mirror universe, and the trains thing, and geometry. Like, oh, you know geometry, you can do that. That was cool. But, like, you probably could have just had... I don't know. There's a version of this movie maybe where Doctor Strange just like I'm being called away. I have to leave. You're on your own or whatever. And he's just gone for no reason. And then Peter's got to figure out, all the stuff by himself. But so there would have been a way to have less of him, and then he just comes back at the end. But
little things.
Doesn't matter.
I do love that Wong is the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was amazing. It's like he was gone. I don't know.
He was gone, so
me now.
Me. Yeah, that was cool. I like that a lot.
And there was a lot of those for like the protagonists. There were a lot of those moments, and like, the fact, I guess, like, one elephant in the room is the May versus Ben versus Gwen thing. Like, May got the great power, great responsibility line. Her sacrifice. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're gonna have to dig into that pretty soon.
Yeah,
you want to jump into that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think. Yeah, that's probably next in the pantheon.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I have some notes written down here. I'm trying to hit everything, but I was real excited that we finally got the great power, great responsibility line. It seems like, I don't know, they started this trilogy. They introduced a new Spider-Man in a way that's just like, we're going to give you a Spider-Man, but we're going to give you Spider-Man like you have never seen Spider-Man before.
Yep.
We've talked about this on the show before. In Homecoming, that really worked for me. He's in the suburbs. He's on the Staten Island ferry. He's in New York, but he's not like just swinging through Manhattan like we've seen 5 other times already. And that worked for me because I identify Spider-Man with New York. I don't really like Spider-Man anywhere other than New York necessarily, which is one of the reasons I didn't love Far From Home, because it didn't feel like Spider-Man to me, really, if he's not in New York City. And that's a mental block with me. If you love Far From Home, great. I just support you. But this seems like they are starting finally to be like, okay, now we've given you so much of this other version of Spider-Man. Now we're going to start giving you the Spider-Man that you expect, because we've established ourselves as a different Spider-Man. We're not just ripping off the Raimi movies or the Webb movies or whatever. Like we're our own. Tom Holland is its own Spider-Man. So now, as of the end of this movie, we can give you classic suit. We can give you New York City. We can give you him on his own, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, tying this back to the Aunt May thing. Yes, I really liked that we finally get the power and responsibility line, and we got it from Aunt May, because Aunt May is such a important character in Spider-Man.
Yep. And
she was shown to be important in both of the original versions of the character. And in this trilogy, she's been very important as well. One of the two moments that made me emotional was her dying in this movie. Which at first I thought was going to happen, and then I thought they weren't going to do it, and then they did it.
Right.
And that was really heartbreaking. And honestly, it was more Tom Holland's acting in that scene was what made me sad.
Yeah.
Because he was incredible. I gotta say, Tom Holland and Zendaya both are phenomenal in this movie. Both of them are incredible. They both do some real heavy emotional stuff with each other. And like, Holland does this scene with Marissa Tomei that is, he's incredible in her death scene. And I think that is their version of Uncle Ben dying that we haven't seen. And that's another thing that they haven't given us in this version of Spider-Man. And they talked about it.
The three Spider-Men talked about it.
Right. But the way that conversation played out, it almost made me think that Tom Holland didn't lose his Uncle Ben. Like,
right. Or I think it felt to me like he may have lost his Uncle Ben, or like,
but it wasn't.
Aunt May was right. Aunt May was a widow, like she would have been in various other forms, but it wasn't. It didn't go down the same. It was like, okay, he died of some other freak natural accident
or
whatever,
cancer or something. Yeah,
right.
Like it wasn't Peter's fault.
Right.
That Uncle Ben died or something, because he was not like resonating with the things that the other Spider-Man were saying about their Uncle Ben. Where I thought in the past, other movies there have been hints at the fact that, this Uncle Ben thing happened, but clearly I think it happened in a different way, or it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because that's something that I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I think he's great. I think he's a great Peter Parker, and I think he's a great Spider-Man. I don't know if he's my favorite, but he might be. He's a strong contender for my favorite out of the three. But there are things, again, addressing the purposeful MCU, we will give you a Spider-Man that is not the Spider-Man that you know. There are things that bug me about that. One of them now possibly being the fact that he doesn't have the Uncle Ben thing, the main, that story. Also, it just bugs me a little bit that that's not, like, I want that to be there. I don't know. I want that to be part of the Spider-Man. It's a pretty
seminal part of the Spider-Man mythos.
It's like this version of Batman, his parents are still alive. Well, what? That doesn't make sense at all.
Yep.
But like, and sure, you're giving us that moment now through the Aunt May thing, but also he's already been Spider-Man, so it's not like it is inspiring. I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Also, it seems clear that in the MCU, there is no Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn does not exist.
Oscorp didn't exist
in the MCU. There's no Oscorp. There's no, like, Octavius says his name is Norman Osborn, and no one was like, oh, you mean the billionaire scientist that runs Oscorp? They don't know what it is.
They're like, Oscorp doesn't exist? What?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, are you telling me there's no Norman Osborn in the MCU? There's no Harry Osborn? Like, we're never going to get we're never going to get a Peter Harry relationship. We're never going to get a Peter Norman like thing. Like, what the hell? Like, that bugs me a little bit. That's like, so to me, it's important to his character to have that character in his life of Harry and Norman, and Oscorp is like a huge thing. I just identify those things, and if that's not going to be part of this, then it's weird for me as a Spider-Man fan.
Right.
And, it doesn't mean that they can't make great movies, and I hope they still continue to make great movies, but I don't know. I wish, like, and then even if they do introduce Norman Osborn, he's always going to be like, oh yeah, I met a different version of you once. So I don't know. It's just going to be different. And that's all. it's all my problem. Like, I fully admit.
It's all
I
your
fully
headcanon.
admit.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, that's my issue. So, I'm sure someone out there probably feels the same, but a lot of people don't, and that's fine. I'm just talking. Just talking. But
I can say I did love. I want to, and I alluded to it in the last podcast. I really want to go back and watch the Amazing Spider-Man movies now, because
dude, you should.
To me, Garfield stole this movie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about this, because now I feel like we've done a good job of talking about everything else. Now we're going to talk about a huge reason to see this movie.
Oh yeah, there's really. Other Spider-Mans.
Yeah, which we've mentioned, but like, let's dig into the return of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. And that's a note that I have, is that I kind of felt like Tobey Maguire kind of seemed like he was sleepwalking through this movie a little bit, like he was there for the check. A little bit, but at the same time, like, he still brought that campy, like, that was his Spider-Man too. Yes. It was a little campy and yes, and I acknowledge that. Yep. I acknowledge that, and I think what part of what is making me think that is the campiness and the way he played Peter, but also combined that with the fact that Andrew Garfield seems like, fuck yeah, I am Spider-Man again, and I am here to do. I am so excited to be here. I am excited to do this. I'm gonna do anything you want. I'm wearing this suit the whole time. Like, it seemed like, and even the fact that Tobey Maguire didn't show up already dressed as Spider-Man made me think, like, was he like, fine, I'll do it, but I'm not wearing the suit the whole time? I don't know. Like, I was just kind of like,
maybe he didn't hit the training regimen and wasn't quite like cut to wear the suit the whole time or something.
Yeah, and they even made a joke about it. He's like, "Are you gonna stay dressed like a cool youth pastor the whole time? Or did you bring a suit?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got my suit." So at that moment, I was like, "Okay, good. He's gonna put his suit on at some point. That would be nice." But yeah, I thought, I noticed a difference in seeming excitement levels to be there. But again, that could be, like you said, could be the way he plays Peter Parker, which is a more internalized, more subdued version of the character. That was another moment, I gotta say. It was like a 2-tiered cheer moment in the theater when Spider-Man walked through the portal, because they're doing the Find Peter Parker. He comes through. It's clear that it's not Tom Holland. It's clear that it is Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. And people cheered when he walked through just as Spider-Man. We're like, yeah. And then when he took his mask off, even more cheers came through. Like, it's actually him. It's not just someone else, whatever. And then another loud cheer when Tobey walked through as well.
I still it was really great. I was amazed. Like, I watched the Andrew Garfield movies back in the day when they came out a couple of times. I don't remember watching them multiple times, but it's been a long time. But like, I know I own both of them. That's got to count for something. But like, I did not. I don't know if it's a different step from where he was as an actor during those movies or what, but like, he felt more right as Spider-Man, or in general, than I had seen him in any of the other iterations that he's done.
But dude, you should watch him again, because he's great. He is great. You like I said, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is not as bad as you remember it. It's I liked it a lot. And it does, there's a lot of cool, like, the way they differentiate how the characters web sling in each of the franchises. It honestly, like, they do it differently in each one, and there's some really cool, which, I mean, of course you'd want to, because you don't want to just have it seem like the same old thing. But there's some really cool web slinging shots in both those Amazing Spider-Man movies, where they do like a cool POV thing a lot of the time. This way they move the camera in and around New York City is like, this is really, really cool.
Nice.
And the fact that they kill Gwen Stacy in that movie, that is a ballsy thing to do. And like, we all knew that it was happening, but I think when I saw it, I was like, I remember in the theater when she showed up in that green coat, I was like, oh, she's gonna die. But part of me was like, they're not going to do it. He's going to save her. They're not really going to do this. This is a Hollywood movie. This is PG-13. They're not going to kill the other main character. And they do. And it is crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy ballsy of them to do that. And the relationship, the acting between the two of those in that movie is incredible. They have crazy chemistry. It's really great. Yes, there's too much going on. Yes, they're forcing the Green Goblin Harry thing in there just to kill Gwen at the end. And that part's kind of a mess, but a lot of it is really good, I gotta say.
Now,
I will
remembering that scene, props to Andrew Garfield for getting his redemption.
Yes, and that was the other time that there was a huge outburst and cheer from people in the theater, was when he got to save MJ.
Yep.
Yeah, and honestly, I loved it, and that was the other part that made me emotional, that almost made me cry. When he did that, because that scene in Amazing Spider-Man 2, I think is great. It's done really well, and his acting in it is incredible. And when he does that, and he even references it when they're having that conversation about like, I couldn't save Gwen. So it that's a way of reminding you, if you haven't watched the other one, like, yeah, I lost somebody, but you don't necessarily know that that's how he lost her.
Right.
But it's a corner cut. Because if you've seen Amazing Spider-Man 2, that's an emotional moment because you've seen Amazing Spider-Man 2, because he's catching her in the same way he couldn't catch Gwen.
Right.
So
but then he references that when they're talking later too.
He does
after May dies.
Yeah, but he doesn't say I lost her because I couldn't catch her because she was falling and I couldn't catch her in time.
Right. I mean, the catch is more of an Easter egg. But the fact that he acknowledges that, hey, that was one of his defining moments. Toby busts out the Uncle Ben, he busts that out, and then the May moment. And it's like, okay, they're hitting that, I guess, and that was the crux of this whole thing. And I guess the takeaway is the three Spider-Men that we feared, like you and I both talked about it. We feared that it would be clunky, that it wouldn't work well.
Yeah.
It felt right. The first time they swung in, all three of them, I can only imagine what that scene felt like in the theater.
Yeah. It was just it was alive.
Okay. Yeah. They're here and they're doing it.
Yeah, and the second half of this movie, like I've said, the second half of this movie is not the clunky half of the movie. The first part is messy and a little bit clunky because they're getting, they got to get all the mess out of the way. But once the mess is out of the way, it really works.
Yeah.
And it works when it starts, for me, it starts really going smooth and working when Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire show up. And then it's like, yep, smooth sailing, we're in good hands, and this is going to work. That moment on the roof of the ceiling when they're having that conversation, really, really reminiscent of almost the exact same scene in Into the Spider-Verse, when Miles just lost his uncle, and they're like, yeah, for me it was my Uncle Ben, for me it was my Uncle Benjamin, for me it was my best friend. Just I think this is the same scene, which kind of made me think, and this is not necessarily a knock against this movie. It just seems like this was part of why I was dreading this movie, because, and I still feel this way.
Yeah.
It seems like the filmmakers, the studio, whatever, saw Into the Spider-Verse and thought, wouldn't it be great if we could bring back all these other villains, all these other Spider-Men, have them all in a movie. Let's do a live action version of this really successful animated movie.
Right.
And if we could get all those actors back, we could make billions of dollars and it'll be great. It seemed like that was the jumping off point for this movie, instead of the jumping off point being, what is the next logical step in the character evolution of Peter Parker? What is the next logical thing that he needs to deal with to grow as a character in the MCU? That doesn't seem like the question that was asked. Maybe that's the one they're going to ask next. I hope that it is, instead of how can we make $500 million opening weekend.
Yeah, that's I'll be well, and I guess we'll see, especially coming out of the tail end of this, what direction Spidey goes. Because I don't know, is there anything else you want to touch on in the bulk of the movie before we get to the ending and
just more things that I loved about it, but also from a movie making, just one more thing, I guess, like that I loved, and they made me laugh out loud, all like the conversations that the three of them are having on the Statue of Liberty, like figuring out how to work together and stuff like that. Like they were really funny. They were very referential of their other movies, which is another thing. Like if I hadn't seen those movies, I don't know what you're talking about. But also some of those conversations, or at least one of them, takes place while the villains are attacking. Like there's like it's surrounded in sand, and they're talking about like we're not really good at working as a team, and there's like, I'm in the Avengers. Like, is that a band? Are you in a band? Like that was, that was funny. And I laughed out loud at that. But also I'm thinking like the three of you are just standing around having a fun conversation. What are the villains just waiting for you to be done? Like, how is this happening? Like, yeah, yeah, exactly. Like this doesn't make logical sense in the world that you have shown me. Like there's at least three guys trying to kill you right now, and you're taking the time to just hang out. Like that doesn't really make sense. But again, it's things like that I'm at odds with, because I loved it and it was fun, but it didn't really make a ton of sense. But movies, fun, for a movie to be fun, it doesn't necessarily have to make sense all the time. Movies that make sense all the time, aren't always the most fun. So I acknowledge that. I know that I'm talking out both sides of my mouth about this movie.
No, but I mean, as always, things can be two things. Like, and actually, that's the other chat I was talking about. Like, we had a differentiation about looking at it as a standalone movie and looking at it as that event. And like we graded it earlier, they're almost two different things, because this is Spider-Man's Endgame. Yeah, and I guess how you look at it frames how you're going to take it. Yeah, and that's why I need to see it again with that in mind, because when I went into Avengers Endgame, I know, like, I can excuse all the stuff that I'm complaining about for this movie. I can excuse with a movie like Avengers Endgame, because it's the series or season finale of this TV show that we've been watching for so long, called the MCU, or in some ways series finale, and whatever comes after that is like a new series almost. I don't know, whatever you want to. Dumb analogy you want to make, fine. If this was Spider-Man season 1 episode 8, we'd be fine. Like tying everything else up, heading into the next series. Yeah, I think the thing that is different with this one for me is because they're not just pulling in other MCU stuff; they're pulling in other universe, other franchises. So like, I know they're all Spider-Man franchises, but it's like, it's weird. Like, you wouldn't make a Batman movie and expect to understand you need to, in order to watch this Batman movie and understand, you have to have watched this Wolverine movie. You know what I mean? Like, they're different franchises, even though like in this case, it's the same character. So that's an extreme example. Well, this would be in the Pattinson Batman if they start, referencing something that Danny DeVito's Penguin did in '89. Yeah, if you have to watch Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson to understand what goes on in the new Robert Pattinson Batman movie, then like that's a fault of that movie. Like, you shouldn't have, like, that should be its own world. That should be introducing its own world in its own way. That's what I would prefer. Anyway, that's all stuff I've said a million times. So the other reason I want to see this movie again is I thought the end scene of him in the apartment when he's made his own costume and he's swinging, I was like, this is going by too fast. I can't get a good look at that costume. There was no him standing completely still for 2 seconds while we get a look at the new costume. Right. That looks like possibly the most comic book accurate Spider-Man costume that we have seen so far. Yep. And I wonder if that's why. I wonder if like we'll do it really quick and maybe we'll like tweak it between movies or whatever and make it a little more realistic looking or whatever. But I don't want it to be realistic. I want it to look exactly like the comic book, because if they continue the way they've been doing it, he'll wear 3 different outfits in Spider-Man 4 or whatever. And it's like sports teams. You got to be able to buy the new jersey every year. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I do like that he's out of the tech suit, because I was really getting sick of the spidery Stark Iron Spider and Iron Spider stuff. Yeah, it's just like, even in the movie when he's fighting Dr. Octopus and the legs come out of his back, I was like, I hate this. I don't like this at all. I just see, at the same time, I kind of against Octavius, I was like, all right, this is kind of a cool nod. Like, we knew because we knew he had the tech. It's like, all right, this is a nice nod, and it's, arms versus arms, and like, all right, this is cool. And then the nanotech takes over, and like that was a nice little nod. But now that we're heading away from that, I'm 100% with you. Yeah, it makes sense in the reality of that movie that he would want to use that suit, and he would want to use the legs against someone else that has
giant legs that he's fighting.
Various
like,
other appendages.
Sense.
Yeah.
But just personally, I don't love that suit. So I'm glad that they showed that he made it himself. Super cool.
Yep.
Similar to I guess you assume that Tobey made it himself because he designs it himself. But you definitely, I think you see Andrew Garfield putting his together, which is cool also.
I did like, as a random aside, I did love that they had the conversation about the web shooters.
Yeah,
that was
great.
Wait, they just come out?
Yeah, I know. Like, whoa, that just came out of your body. Like, that was great. That was great. Yeah, so I think I'm pretty much said everything I want to say, except let's hit that. I got one more thing before we hit the post-credit scene.
Okay.
Mid-credit scene. Is that, I don't know, you do so much work to bring in these 5 villains. You couldn't bring in one more and make it a Sinister Six?
Right.
Like, come on. You're so close.
They did. There technically were 6 in the movie.
Yeah, but
or in the runtime of the movie.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I mean when, like, yeah, just bring in someone we've never met. Like, just have a character come in and make like a pulling from a multiverse. Give us someone we've never seen. Give us someone we've never heard of.
Right.
Like, whatever. Like,
in all honesty,
and then
call me
you can
crazy.
Call
me crazy. Sorry. Like, even if it was just like, they could have had in the runtime of the film a random pan to Adrian Toomes watching TV.
Yes.
Like, just some reference of like, oh yeah, there's another guy.
Yeah.
Like, there's six villains. Like, even if he doesn't show up, just like some acknowledgement that, oh yeah, there's, it's a Sinister Six, not a 5.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing all this work anyway. I feel like there could have been a way to just bring somebody else in or bring in.
I just had an epiphany.
What's your epiphany?
You know why they're not going to do that? Because Sony wants to make a Sinister Six movie.
Do you think they still want to do that though?
I would assume with the stupid movies they're putting out with Craven and Morbius and all this.
Oh yeah.
Like, they're leaning into the villains, and that this just came to me when we were talking, and it's like, what if Sony said you can only have 5 because we're going to make a Sinister Six?
Yeah, maybe. Interesting.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know either. Just seemed like they could have made it happen, but I guess that's a good point.
We just got someone in the chat, Marcus Devil May Cry, saying he doesn't like the ending.
The ending, meaning,
the one more day ending.
Yeah, the fact that they erased everything.
Yeah,
Marcus, is that what you're talking about? Yeah. I know, and that's like I was saying earlier, I'm of two minds about it. Where I like that you can get a little bit more friendly neighborhood. I like that you can reinvent stuff, maybe,
Right.
It's like rebooting without rebooting, kind of. But it's also weird to me. Like, yeah,
it's rebooting without rebooting Tom, but you're rebooting everything else, and it's like,
right.
You spent these 3, like, give or take whatever you liked or didn't like about the other 2 movies. You had 3 movies of development for all of these characters.
Yes.
And him and MJ and him and Ned and the dynamic between all that, and they did just effectively erase all of it.
Yeah, and
even him and Strange and him and the Avengers, like, everybody who knew Peter Parker is no longer there. Yeah,
and you can say, like, oh, I'm sure that they'll figure out a way to make Gwen or make MJ remember him, but like, well, then why did he sacrifice this for? Like, if you're just like, if I'm worried about how long this is going to be in place, and like how long until Doctor Strange does another spell that reverts it or whatever, because like, I don't like when people make, like, that'd be like bringing Tony Stark back to life in the next movie or something. Like, no, he made a sacrifice, he's dead, he's got to stay dead, or his sacrifice doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. This is the same kind of thing. Like, Peter made a huge sacrifice here. How long is it until they just figure out a way to undo it, or to undo it for some people to make MJ remember him? And I want that. I like those 2 together. I want that, but I also don't want them to just like, okay, we're gonna like scroll all that back, all that emotion that was tied into that ending, we're gonna get rid of that. Like, I don't want them to do that. So, Marcus, I understand you not really loving the ending, but at the same time, I am excited to see what they can now do, because now they're free to do a lot more stuff than maybe they would have been. And I guess I don't really know like what they're free to do besides have him date somebody else. Just be on his own.
Right.
But I gotta say, I'm excited to have Tom Holland continue in this role, because part of the reason, like reading Spider-Man comics growing up, like I really like that you read early ones that when he's a kid, and then you read ones that are modern and he's adult and he's married to Mary Jane, or like
right.
You saw him grow up in the books.
And if you didn't, go back and watch or read Spider-Man Life Story, and that will give you a phenomenal perspective on Spidey, in the 50s, 60s, or the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 10s. They had all 6 issues, and it was extremely well done on how Spider-Man's arc actually went.
It was like every main Spider-Man arc ever condensed into
like, do you want a primer? All right, here's your Spider-Man primer. Enjoy.
Yeah, and he ages. In real time. Ages in real time with every book. Yeah, which is interesting. So I would love to see. I don't know how old Tom Holland is now, 20 something. Like, how cool would it be if he's still playing Peter Parker, like an older version of Peter Parker in 10 years when he's.
Are we gonna get the Wastelanders old man Parker?
Who knows? I would love it. Yeah. Why not?
That said, with that whole thing, like, if they don't bring him back to play the friendly neighborhood, I would like to just see him go away for all of Phase 4. Like, just, maybe there's a cameo, or Spidey shows up in a back scene of something or whatever. But I'm pretty sure we're not going to see much more of him in Phase 4.
Well, yeah, maybe, I guess you don't know.
Maybe until we get back to Fantastic Four. And something like based in New York.
Yeah. I mean, we do know that he's like, we said in the other show, Tom Rothman, Sony Chair, said that there is one more appearance of Tom Holland in an MCU movie as Spider-Man in the current contract. And then they're going to make another Spider-Man Central movie. So he's going to show up somewhere, but there's no big team up movie on the books right now. But yeah, he could show up anywhere. It's the MCU. They could use him anywhere. They could figure it out and just make it work.
But if you look at what Phase 4 is currently, you've got, the Marvels, you've got Wakanda Forever.
They haven't announced an end to Phase 4, right? They're just like still announcing stuff.
I thought, okay, in my brain, whatever was happening with the Fantastic Four date was going to be the end of it, but I may have made that up in my headcanon.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's Fantastic Four, because it's being directed by the same guy.
Yeah, true.
And it will be interesting to see if they go with a different director for Spider-Man 4, for the 4th Tom Holland Spider-Man. That will be interesting. See if they get with the same guy or go in a different direction. It could be cool. Like, I think John Watts did a great job on all 3 of these movies, but it would be cool to get a different flavor of a different director.
Yeah, so coming up, you've got Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder, Wakanda Forever, The Marvels, Guardians, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then Fantastic Four and Blade. So, of that, where is Spidey going to show up? You know what I mean?
Out of those, it seems like Fantastic Four might be the most obvious. But again, I mean, he could show up he could show up in Ant-Man. He could show up in. It would be crazy if he showed up on a Disney Plus show.
Well, that actually, Marcus mentioned Ironheart, which would be great to see. Although, Riri is MIT, so maybe you swing it over to Boston. Oh, MIT. Oh, boy. Yeah.
Maybe Ironheart's the thing.
You might be onto something, man.
Dude, how cool would it be, even if... Marcus, thank you for saying that, dude. Even if it's not Tom Holland, like, what if we get Zendaya?
Yeah.
In the Ironheart movie.
Yep. That would be cool. Just interacting with Riri at some point.
Yeah, or Ned. Like, that would be awesome.
That'd be...
Man. That would be dope.
Now we're down another rabbit hole.
Oh, man. Okay.
So...
before this becomes way too long.
We've already talked on this episode more than we have on our mainline episodes. So.
Yeah. Good. Mid-credit scene. Theater erupted when we saw Tom Hardy sitting at a bar in Mexico. And I really like this post-credit scene because it made you think one thing was going to happen, and then it pulled the rug out from underneath that, and then told you that something else is going to happen that's better, I think, because he says, maybe I'll have to go to New York and talk to this Spider-Man guy. And that in the theater, everyone was like, oh yeah, you go to New York. Like, and then he started disappearing because the multiverse closed, and everyone was like, oh, okay, I guess he's not going to go to New York. And then there's a little drop of symbiote left over on that countertop. And somehow that's going to make its way to Peter Parker. I don't know how. I hope.
Life finds a way.
Life finds a way.
The immortal words of Jeff Goldblum, Dr. Ian Malcolm.
Yeah. I think that... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, does that end up, bring us into Secret Wars, like, symbiote suit? Does that end up, as dumb as it sounds, going to Flash, Agent Venom style? Like,
does it end up in Secret Invasion, the TV show, the Disney Plus show somehow? Shield confiscates it, then it's in their possession, and then it ends up with Peter somehow. I don't know, but I think that is. But it's also interesting to figure out what is going to happen there,
right?
Because Sony still wants to make Venom movies, but now they're giving us a door to eventually have an MCU version of Venom. So are they really cool having two different Venoms running around? Or is it going to somehow tie back into the Tom Hardy version somehow? I don't know. Or, maybe they'll just give him the black costume for a while and we'll forget about, and then it won't go directly into Venom, which I think is probably a good idea. Like, just let him have the black costume.
I mean, they're driving Cosmic for a lot of things. Does Null make an appearance? We're getting Gore the God Butcher. We're going to have the Necro Sword. Like...
But see, that gets to, for me, that then I'm just like, I don't want any of that. Like, the symbiote is a lot for me as a friendly neighborhood guy. The symbiote alone is a lot for me, even though I really love it.
Yeah.
But,
no, I'm not talking like I'm not even talking with Spider-Man. Like just in general. Yeah. Like MCU in general.
I mean, this is where I am at the MCU. Like, I feel like when they did like the Avengers and they're dropping Easter eggs, the first Avengers movie or whatever, that was a success. And then I'm like, oh my God, they're doing the Infinity Saga. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, this is going to happen. Like, I used to get really surprised, like, no way, they're really going to do that. And now it's like, oh yeah, of course they're going to do that.
Right. Now it's,
of course.
Well, and that was the thing is, now that we've seen that they can pull it off, it's just like, yeah, they're going to go there. Why wouldn't they go there?
Yeah, they can pull off anything. So they could do anything that they want. All these crazy things that you're talking about, yes, they could do those. Yeah. And I'd be a little surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked in any way. I'd be like, oh yeah, wow, that's cool. Oh, they're doing that? Great.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be like, no way. But yeah, interesting, exciting mid-credit scene, because now there's a drop of symbiote somewhere in the MCU. And we'll see where that goes. Certainly a way to continue the trend of not letting Tom Holland wear one spider costume for the entire movie.
Yep. Then the second credit, or the full end credit scene, the trailer for Multiverse.
It was a trailer. It wasn't a scene,
I would say we take that and we drop that for next week, because I'm sure that'll drop to the masses sometime this week.
Oh, okay, sure.
So
I liked it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it seemed and. You know the cut that I saw. It's there's more to talk about.
yeah, for sure.
So,
but anyway, I think that's all the notes that I had.
Same.
Everything.
I think
super fun. Yep. Even just talking about it with you made me see it in a lighter or more positive way than I had been. I don't know why I had been so tough on it. I think it's because of the things, because it was a lot of what I expected, and also so many people are like, it's the greatest Spider-Man movie ever, and I don't think that kind of causes me to be like, nah, I'm gonna dig into why I don't like this a little bit more, right? Because I am being contrary to you guys who thought it was great. I don't know, it's that contrarian in me, I guess, but I really did like it, and I can't wait to see it again at some point. And I'm glad that everyone's liking it, and I'm glad it means more Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, absolutely. So
because I love Spider-Man and I love Spider-Man movies, and there was a little bit of time where we weren't really sure that we were going to get more, or we're going to get more good ones, or what was going to happen, so now it seems like we're continuing in this direction with Tom Holland and Sony and the MCU, and I'm down for it. Can't wait for more.
I'm right there with you, man. So for anyone who's tuning in, feel free to follow us on Twitch. This will be up on YouTube. This will be up on our podcast feed. The Multiverse Report at most social media, Multiverse RPT on Twitter. Check us out. Send us some feedback. Let us know. Marcus, appreciate you commenting on the stream. Awesome to have you guys interacting. Out, it's been a run, and this was definitely a movie.
Yeah. And this was 2 episodes for us in one night. Wow. It's a lot of work for you and me, buddy. So, hey, I should have said this in the other one too, because it's the last episode that we're doing before the Christmas holiday. But if you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. If you don't, hope you have just a wonderful end of your December.
Holiday season.
Holiday season, whatever you're celebrating, whatever you're doing. Hope you enjoy it. Much love to you and yours. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I don't know. Next week's the day after Christmas. We might be. Are we going to do one of these? Maybe we will.
Depends.
I don't know.
We'll play it by ear.
I'll talk about it. Yeah, we'll see. But anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time around the multiverse.